Good morning, my beautiful babes and babettes. I am your resident active advocate, here to talk to you today about the difference between unipolar depression and bipolar depression, as well as the different causes that can make these things happen. That was redundant. Okay, so unipolar versus bipolar depression. As their names may suggest, unipolar means one pole, one mood. You tend to be chronically apathetic, chronically down, as you would say in layman's terms. Whereas with bipolar depression, there is the chronic down, but there's also periods where the person is very up and jittery and electric, but they're still not happy internally speaking. They just have more energy than when they're down, because apathy does rather entail a lack of energy, both mental and physical at times. And I have known people to suffer from both of these disorders. And unipolar, I shouldn't speak for every case, and I don't speak for every case, but it seems much easier to deal with on a day-to-day basis than bipolar depression would be. Because, I mean, you could wake up one day and be on up and not know how you got there, but also not be able to necessarily control your mood. I knew a guy who had or has bipolar depression, and when he was on an up, you could definitely tell because he'd be moving around at this very anxious pace and swearing when he spoke, which he didn't often do, and different things like that, which sort of indicated to me a much higher energy level than he usually had. When he was, quote, normal, which would be for him the down aspect of bipolar depression, he didn't do those sorts of things. And I could feel whenever I was around him that there was this sort of almost electricity in the air around him. And that's just, I mean, I know that that's awkward phrasing, but it was this sort of manifestation of what was going on in here, that he would just be jittery and up, 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 very energetic, but still unhappy, as I said before. As far as I'm aware, there are two different kinds of treatments. As I said yesterday, there is no cure that we are aware of for both unipolar and bipolar depression. There are drugs, so the medical side, but there are also social things that can be done. I find that with depression, much of the issue stems from the fact that a lot of people don't understand what depression is, therefore they don't really know how to handle it in other people, but especially in themselves. And when you get into this whole, not necessarily victim blaming complex, but this whole thing about why can't you just be happy? And especially if you have depression and you're saying that to yourself, that does much more harm than good, because you are creating expectations for yourself and for other people that are not reasonably fulfilled. You can't just be happy, because depression, as I say, is not chronic sadness, it's chronic apathy. And when you're apathetic, you don't have the energy to just pick yourself up by your bootstraps and, just act happy. Even the fake it till you make it philosophy doesn't really come into play here, because it's very difficult to put on an act when you don't have the energy for it. Now, even when people have bipolar depression and they're on an up, they're not putting on any kind of act there either. It's just their brain operating in the way it operates. I've discussed before about the difference between, being impaired versus being different, seeing yourself as just different. And we're all different from one another, as I've said countless times. But the whole thing about depression is that people with depression are perceived as more different than, quote, the rest of us. It creates, yet again, this whole sense of an in-group and an out-group, and we don't like the out-group, so why can't they just be part of the in-group? Why can't they will themselves to be part of the in-group? That is the major social stigma that makes it so very difficult to have any kind of mental illness, not just depression, of either bent. So the social, quote, cure for this would be to increase one's knowledge and one's understanding, whereas the medical treatment would be drugs like SSRIs, which stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. In other words, it doesn't allow serotonin to leave your brain, and serotonin is not the happiness chemical, it's the calming chemical. And a lot of the problem with depression is that you're also chronically anxious. Depression and anxiety go hand in hand. And that's not a good combination, especially in a person with bipolar disorder, because the anxiety aspect can get the better of them when they're on an up. And that can be what causes the sort of, not crazy, that's a horrible word, but the more outstanding behavior that you grow to expect from someone when they're on an up, when they have bipolar disorder. So drugs are not intrinsically a bad thing. If they work, and that's amazing. And do not go off your drugs, no matter who tells you to do it, unless it is your doctor. That's the one piece of actual medical advice I will give you if you have depression. Do not self-medicate, do not self-treat. It's not that you don't know your mind, it's not that you don't know your body. It's that medical professionals are trying to help you, and they're not intrinsically bad people. They're doing what they believe is best in your case, because the Hippocratic Oath would state that they are not permitted to do otherwise. So basically, that is my difference between unipolar and bipolar, and also the potential causes and treatments. Much of the cause does reside in the exterior of people with depression being considered the other. And that, as we have formerly covered, long since covered, is not a good thing, because there is the I and the other, but to the other, everyone else is other. So all of this stuff is relative. Don't take it as gospel that your perspective is the only one that matters, because it ain't. And I speak for myself here too. All right, my beautiful babes and babettes, I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you tomorrow. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. I'll figure it out and get back to you.